What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to episode 8 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Lillianwall. I've got producer Noah here with me. Noah, say what's up to the people.
Man, what's up? I don't know. This is going to be an exciting episode. This is going to be probably my favorite episode we've done so far.
We're going to be laying down some heat today. We're going to be talking about some Seattle Sounders, and we've got an enthralling one for you today. This one was a barn burner. 0-0.
Vamos.
0-0 at Lumen Field against Orlando City SC. 90 minutes. 2 periods of stoppage time. 0 goals.
0.
Unfortunately, this is the second 0-0 draw we've had to break down here, and it's never ideal when that happens. Ideally, you want at least 1 goal to break down. You know, I don't even care whether it's for Seattle or against Seattle. I would just take any goal to talk about, but unfortunately, no goals were scored, and as such, we've got to break down another 0-0. So, unfortunate, but it is what it is. We don't shy away from whatever the result was. We tackle it head on, even if it was 0-0. There's a common misconception, I think, among non-soccer fans about a 0-0 draw, which is that if a game ends 0-0, that automatically means it was a boring game or a bad game just because no one scored. Not necessarily true. Sometimes a 0-0 can be wildly entertaining. I've seen a lot of 0-0s where it's nonstop action and it's just as enthralling as a 4-3. I would not categorize this as one of those occasions. This wasn't a terribly boring 0-0. There was a little bit of XG flying around. Not a lot, but a little bit. But there was some. It wasn't a gouge your eyes out type bad 0-0. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to lay down my opening reaction monologue, initial takeaways, and then we're going to hit some questions from you all, the people. Put out a tweet today asking if anybody had questions or concerns they wanted me to talk about regarding this team, and several of you submitted. So I'll hit those questions. I'll get to as many of those as I can. Thank you to everyone who submitted. I appreciate that, and we'll shout you out when we get to your question.
Heck yeah.
Seattle lined up this game with the exact starting 11 they did on Wednesday at LAFC with one change, which was Yeimar for Raul Ruidiaz. Other than that, it was the same 11. Albert Rusnak at the 10. Nico Ladero at right mid, but really more of as a dual 10. Leo Chu on the other wing. JP and Obed as the CDMs. And then Cody Baker, Jackson Reagan, Yeimar Nuhu at the back. So the thing I was looking for from this lineup compared to the LAFC game was, can they score a goal with this? That's the main thing I was looking at. LAFC was the first time they ran this in a game, and they didn't score a goal. But when you're trying out new tactics, the first time you try it in a game can be pretty rough. You can grind it in training all you want, but once it's game day, it's different, and it's to be expected to an extent that there will be an acclimation period and some growing pains when you have players playing out of position and you're rotating the lineup. So I was looking to see if there was growth from the last game, is basically what I'm saying. And the answer to that question turned out to be no, they did not score a goal with this lineup. And, you know, I don't really know how much there is to break down about this 0-0. This game was defined in 2 moments. There was 2 clear-cut, no doubt about it chances in this game, 1 for each team. Seattle's came early. It was just a few minutes after kickoff. Nico Ladero had a rip inside the box, absolutely blasted the crossbar.
Smoked that thing.
He smoked that thing. And the way the rest of this game turned out, Seattle they needed that to go in. They've been in a poor run of form, down on their luck, missing a lot of players. If that goes in, that could have been a vibe salvager. You know, early goal, you get on top at home. Seattle was playing well after kick, I thought. They started on the front foot, but unfortunately, it clangs woodwork, and Seattle didn't really come all that close to scoring the rest of the game. They actually did have one before the Nico chance when Rusnak put Yeimar through. He's running onto it from a tough angle, puts it wide. They might have had some half chances here and there after that, but there was nothing like the Nico chance. Orlando's came near the end of the second half, and really Seattle was lucky to not lose this game because Mauricio Pereira had an open netter off rebound really late in the game, and my guy sent it into orbit. That thing is still in ascent, actually. That ball is in a galaxy that mankind will never have the technology to discover. And that really should have been a goal. So Seattle dodged a bullet there for sure, but I think ultimately it's not like Orlando can feel that hard done because the one that Ladero put off the post, that's a goal a lot of the time too. They got lucky on that one. So this could have been a 1-1, but ultimately a draw was a fair result. There was not really that much differentiating these two teams in this game, and a point apiece was more than fair. That's what they both deserved.
You could say it was a mid-off.
Mid-off?
A mid-off. Like, they're both mid.
Oh, I see. A mid-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually a fair way to put it now that I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. We got to hook them up with the Zoomer humor, you know?
The question Seattle is dealing with right now is a question that a lot of MLS clubs have to face, and they're facing it right now, which is, when you're down some guys, which they are right now, how do we get a rotated lineup functioning on offense? The absences in this game are just tough. I know I sound like a broken record, but when you're talking about Raul Ruidiaz, Christian Roldan, Jordan Morris, and Alex Roldan, that's 4 of the most important players on the entire team to how Seattle plays, you could argue. And with that in mind, I can see the logic with this lineup that they've been running out. The Albert Rusnak at the 10 thing is now 3 games in. I thought that was a temporary thing, but as it stands right now, that seems to be what they're rolling with. And I think that's a good idea. That's necessary. You need to assess whether Rusnak is the long-term answer at that position. We talked about it on the last show, but he's shown those attributes in his career in MLS. Anyone who wants to say that Albert Rusnak is just a categorically bad player, just go look at his numbers and his highlights from when he played at RSL. He has not been playing that position on this team. They dropped him back a line, which is not his natural position. But I think what's happening is people are just looking at the stat sheet without taking into account that he's been playing out of position. So I think it's good to see him play his natural position. I want to see that over a legitimate sample, and then I'll assess my take on that. But for now, I think that's the right move by Schmetz. You got nothing to lose, and you need to see if he's the answer there. So I think that's fine. Good, actually. As for Ladero at right mid, it hasn't been working, but I also see the logic. All it is just getting all your best players on the field, kind of regardless of position. I think our friend Mark Kastner said that on the last show, but that's what it is. It's a tough spot with personnel right now. Just is. There's not a lot of options. I got a lot of questions about the roster build that I think are fair, but the reality is some of this is just life in MLS, salary cap league. Everyone would love to be 2 and 3 deep at every position, and some teams are able to pull that off. You can go through history and find instances of teams that have that type of crazy depth, but those are the exceptions, not the rule. Situations like this are common. Seattle's not unique in this. You've seen actually teams all over MLS over these last few weeks, whether it be injuries or national team duty, that there's just been some wonky lineups. There's a lot of different stuff going on. So, reality of this situation is that when you get guys injured or they go on international duty, you're going to see lineups like this because the roster rules just don't really lend themselves to being 2 to 3 deep at every spot. That being said, these lineups Seattle has been putting out are not that outlandish, compared to some of the situations I've seen in the past. Hebert was a guy who was brought in as a proven MLS goal scorer. Nico's not a right mid by trade, but he drifts around all the time anyway, even when he's lined up central. So there's an element of it where they should be creating more in attack than this, even with this personnel. It's not the most outlandish 11 I've ever seen. Far from it. Either way, they've run this lineup twice now, haven't scored a goal yet. So I don't really know what to say about the attack at this point other than we'll just have to see if they grind it more in training. Guys get more used to it and comfortable in their roles and figure out what type of stuff works after watching the film and see if they can get this personnel to a point where they're generating more on offense. But I'm not going to lie to you all. This might be like pulling teeth for a little while. Christian and Jordan are going to be gone for a bit. Alex is also at the Gold Cup with El Salvador. You know, he might be back sooner, but he's going to be gone for a bit. Raul's dealing with stuff that takes super obvious priority over the game right now. So for this Houston game coming up next weekend, for example, we'll preview that in depth on the next show. But I'll be honest, like, I don't know if I see a scenario where they're scoring multiple goals. The scenario would be if they have a breakthrough in training and from watching the film and figure something out that allows them to be more multifaceted in attack, where it's not just Leo Chu bombing down the left and firing in crosses and they manage to snap out of this funk. That could happen, but really I think all it is right now is just putting out the best lineup that you have, which I think is what Schmetz is doing, to be fair. Like, when I saw the Nico at right mid thing, that wasn't what I predicted, but after I saw that that's what they were running, I think that is how they should be lining it up. And you just have to hope it improves from there in attack. I don't know if there's like a magic recipe or change you can make to the starting 11 or formation tweak. You know, if there was something like that, if I knew what the recipe was, I would tell you all, but I honestly don't know. The defense was good in this game. 10 clean sheets on the season in 20 games. I thought Nuhu had a monster game. This was one of the better Nuhu games. He was locking it down. I think everyone could see who was watching the game that Nuhu was balling out. Yeimar and Jackson Reagan in the middle were good. Cody Baker continues to look good. I'm still impressed with him. So no real down marks defensively. Orlando had the one chance, but that was pretty much it. I didn't think they looked like Real Madrid out there or anything. Keeping clean sheets is absolutely pivotal for this team right now with the offense producing. They got to keep it to 0. So that's good. But, Noah, unless you have anything that you think I missed, I think we can move on to these questions. It's another 0-0, so I just don't really know how much there is, to be honest.
I don't think there's a lot to dissect here. I think there's a lot of people that are frustrated with the way that things played out. I think that that's fair, considering the run of form. But I'm going to be honest. I was there. I was at the game. I watched it. I left. I was disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Head in my hands on that light rail home. But I rewatched the game, and that Nico chance is just unlucky. That's a beautiful ball. There were some great opportunities where Rusnak and Hebert were having really good play together. And, I mean, yeah, like it's another game where no one's scoring, and it's the continued problems. But I just, like, it's hard because they don't even look like a bad team. Maybe I'm crazy.
Well, no, I think it's kind of a similar thing to what happened after CCL last year, which is that the results weren't good, but it's not like they were ever getting blown out or getting boat raced off the field in any of those games. They were competitive. They were playing every game straight up. They just weren't getting results, and it does feel similar. But, I mean, you mentioned that Nico chance. I thought for the first, I don't know if it was fully 10 minutes, but right after kick, I was thinking actually like, okay, like they look like they're going to score. Yeah. Like he rings that off the post. There was the one from Rusnak to Hebert. Like I was pretty sure they were going to get a goal in the game even after Nico put it off the post. And then as the game got more into it, it faded, I would say.
Yeah, I could tell that there was some mental fragility, if you could. I don't know if that's a good word to use either, but it just seemed like as the game drug on, it was just like back in your own head again. Hebert with his hands in his head in his hands again, and
I was gonna say, like, it's in their heads.
Yeah.
It's in their heads because even in the sequences where they are having good attacking movements and they do look like they're going to score on offense, they're not putting the goals away. And I think it's for sure in their head. And I think, I think multiple players and Schmetz have even mentioned this. It's like you got guys like trying to do too much.
Yeah.
I think Nico, he wants so bad for the team to succeed and to be scoring goals that, and he's playing a little out of position. He's trying to do too much. He's trying to do too much. And it's not just him. I think there's multiple guys that you could say that about. So yeah, I think that's a good point. You want to jump into these questions now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Address
the people?
First question, Ari.
Yeah.
And this one's a big one from me personally. Where's the lineup? Why is it not out yet?
Yeah, I'm glad you worked that one in there. You can always get that one in the live Sounders mentions if you want. That's a time-honored bit, so that's sprung that one on me.
Sprung that one on you, but for real here, I saw a couple of people, and I don't have their ats here, but this is one that I remembered is Smetzer on the hot seat at all? Is there any kind of fire under his ass?
Yeah, no, I saw a couple of those.
It made me giggle.
No, he's not. He's not on the hot seat. The only way Schmetz would be on the hot seat is if they had the full team together, healthy, and all the first choice guys were here and playing, and then the run of results still looked like this. But like, you can't put your coach on the hot seat in MLS every single time your team has a bad run of form when you have a bunch of absences. Because if you did that, then you would be just churning through coaches like a madman. Like, you have to take into account the context of it with that. So, and I personally, I don't really I see the issues more as personnel over coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So no, though, like I said, the only scenario would be if you had Christian here, Jordan here, Raul here, Alex here, everyone in the lineup, and they still weren't scoring goals like this, and then that would have to happen over a sustained sample size for that to be a question in my mind.
All right. We'll talk more about coaching here in a second with our first question, which comes from @2 from the 360. First one goes off. I'm just going to read these all rapid fire succession. So
Okay.
get your notes app ready, Ari.
Got it.
1. Where is Josh Atencio? Brackets. From the starting 11. 2. When is the right time to relegate Nico to a super sub? And why is it not done to start the season? 3. How soon can we bring back Gonzalo Pineda? 4. Is Ozzy Alonso looking for a coaching job? And 5. Why is Sam Adeniran not a Sounder?
This is
Sam
good stuff.
Adeniran scored 2 goals last weekend.
He did. Yeah, that's a great point. A brace for St. Louis City SC. So that was kind of insult to injury, I think, for Seattle people to see that. But yeah, thank you for the questions @2 from the 360. I like that you submitted 5. That's great. We like the enthusiasm. Josh Atencio, that's a good question. Josh Atencio was playing really well before he got injured. He scored a banger against St. Louis. It's not like anyone else on the team has been scoring lately. Not that that's his job, really, but as of now, it seems like Obed has him topped on the depth chart. And in that situation, that's usually based on what's happening in training and what the coaches see and who they think should be starting. I kind of view Josh and Obed at a roughly similar spot in their development and what they bring. I don't know how much of a difference there you get between one or the other. They're slightly different, but development-wise and where they're at in their careers and what they bring, I see it as pretty similar. But if the team keeps struggling like this, I wouldn't mind seeing Atencio get a run. I think he earned that based on how he was playing earlier in the season.
Do you think that if he doesn't get a run, we're going to see him loaned out or moved around, or do you think he's sticking with the team?
I mean, it's possible. Like, if it gets to the off season and he's still not getting minutes, he might want to go to somewhere where he's getting a bigger role. So That's an interesting question for the offseason that they're going to have to tackle. As for Nico being a super sub and why was it not done to start the season, that's a question people have been asking a lot too. But I mean, I can tell you the time is just not right now because you don't have the personnel. Like when you have all the guys that are gone back, then that actually becomes an actual good debate. Like, is Nico in a first choice 11 when you have Jordan and Christian back? And depending on how Rusnak looks at the 10 going forward here, maybe you have to keep him up there and Nico is a super sub. But right now you can't do that because they just don't have the bodies. So that's kind of how I see that. Bringing back Gonzo Pineda, maybe soon. Atlanta United, down bad. Just lost 4-0 to the Red Bulls. And they're having a pretty erratic and bizarre year in general. I don't know if this is still the case, but it was, at least in the last couple weeks, that they were leading the league in both goals scored and goals conceded. But their form overall has been erratic. And so I don't know if he's on the hot seat. I'm not as plugged into what's going on down there, but he might be. So bring him home.
Hey, bring Gonzo home. Someone did a chart that showed after the departure of Gonzo and
Jimmy Traore.
Yeah, Traore, that the just overall wins, losses, ties is we're down. We're in the mud.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know how much of a real correlation that is, but I saw that same stat. Ozzy Alonso looking for a coaching job. I mean, he's still playing for Atlanta United, but he might someday, so I could see it. And Sam Adeniran, I mean, look, 2 goals for St. Louis City SC last night. I mean, that's as many goals as Habers got this season. So
he never had a 2-goal game, I'll tell you that much.
If Sam Adeniran actually develops into a consistent MLS goal scorer for St. Louis City, like he's just banging goals in every week, the takes are going to be flying.
My takes are already ready to be flying.
They already were flying after everyone saw that he scored 2 goals. He was, oh God, he had like a really good header, like just a beastly striker header. And then I think they had him taking a penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have him taking their PKs. Like, Slamming Sam is on the up.
He's him, bro.
They should have kept him. Should have kept him.
I agree.
Right. Next question.
This one comes from Oren Levine. 3 main issues for me. You ready, Ari?
Yeah.
Here's the 3. The playmaking 10 position. 2, goalkeeper. 3, backup wingers and strikers. Our starters at 10 and goalkeeper were elite. League got better and they got older. I would like thoughts focused on 2024, 2025, not changes now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about goalkeeper first because there's been more talk than I expected about a Stefan Fry.
That's surprising to me too.
Yeah, I might agree that there's been a few goals this year that have been shipped that maybe he should have saved, or in past years maybe he gets to it. I just don't see goalkeeping as the prevailing issue with this team. It's not really the defense in general. The defense has 10 clean sheets. Fry had a good game last night. I don't know. To my eye, I see him performing at pretty much the same level that he always does. 2024 and 2025, I mean, yeah, these are the questions that are coming up. You're going to have to talk about guys like Ladero and Rui Diaz and Hebert. Anyone who's in their 30s, there's going to come a point where this roster, that turnover is going to have to happen at some point. But, I mean, you can't blow it up and start over mid-season. So, for right now, there's nothing they can really do but roll with what they've got and hope that this personnel can turn it around. And, regarding number 10, I think we're about to find out a lot about that. Rusnak's been getting his run. If he comes into his own and starts putting up numbers, you can ride that. If he plays up there with the full complement of players and the offense still isn't producing, then you have to base how you approach it on that. It's just stuff that is TBD.
I will also note Seattle Sounders, 10 clean sheets, the most in MLS. I know it's a defensive role altogether, but like last night, Fry had some insane saves.
He had some good saves. I think the defense has been fine. You can point to 2 outlier games, Portland away and Charlotte away, where it got away from him and they started shipping goals. And they've also shipped, they did this last year too. They've shipped really poorly timed and just kind of like back-breaking goals
Yeah.
at extremely inopportune moments. But if you're just looking at like the pure volume of goals that they've conceded, like it's not been a bad defense.
Yeah, and I think you have a lot of players coming into their own as well. Where Jackson Reagan's looking good.
Yeah. Cody
Baker. Dude, I love Cody Baker. This is a Cody Baker podcast.
It kind of is, man. It's starting to become that. He's like the ray of light right now.
Yeah, which there you go. If you want thoughts focused on 2024, 2025, we have players like Cody Baker coming up through the pipeline that, listen, I don't know nothing about nothing, but if I'd put money on something, it would be that Cody Baker will be a very good player. So with that, let's jump into our next question from Dave W. Montgomery. How would you fix our stale attack, especially when mixing guys like Raul, Jordan, and Christian? Should Sounders be on the lookout for younger forward as a second or third option? Hebert seems unlucky, Montero is looking a little old, and guys like Adeniran and AOC are long gone.
Slam and Sam is like the main character of
Slam and
this
Sam,
show.
baby.
And we got an AOC reference too.
AOC, old man Montero, and unlucky Hebert.
I don't know how to fix the stale attack. I really don't. That's the number one question with this team right now.
I don't think Brian even knows.
No, that's what they're trying to figure out. With the absences they've had, they haven't been able to figure that out. But if I had to boil it down to two things, I think it would be getting Rusnak cooking at the 10, and Hebert needs to start scoring. Like, if you get those two things going, that solves a lot of problems. Hebert has been unlucky. I know people don't want to hear it. I honestly feel bad for the guy. Like, he's not a bad player. He's been a productive goal scorer in MLS. He's just having a rough go right now. But I do think that there's a scenario where he gets in that NYCFC form. He's shown in his career that he can do it, so I don't think it's just completely out of the question. I don't know if he will, but I don't think it's impossible. Freddie is a role player on this team, and it's not like you can realistically expect him to be carrying a big load, but
he shows up every once in a while, like in the Austin game.
He scored in the Austin game, so that was the only goal they scored in that game. But yeah, Slam and Sam and AOC are gone. AOC hasn't been getting a first-team run with Austin yet, to my knowledge, but seeing Slam and Sam get 2 goals last night, that's one to keep an eye on.
It was salt in the wounds.
If he's good, people are going to be asking questions. They already are. So.
Yeah. Hebert with another big chance missed last night, adding his total 12 big chances missed as the most unlucky player in MLS.
Do you have where that ranks league wide?
Yeah, it's top.
Number one.
Under him is 10. And then under that, 8. So he is far out ahead.
I'm sorry, but like for anyone who is like doubting that he's been unlucky, that proves that he's been unlucky.
But to
that
be
proves
fair,
it. But
Ari, he only has a 4.7 conversion rate. So if we extrapolate out, we do a little math
now
here.
You're into the extrapolating
we do a little stats here.
You're doing.
We look at his XG. I'm just kidding. Keep going. Fire your
No,
take.
I'm just saying, like, the only thing to take away from that is that, like, theoretically, with law of averages, if he keeps getting big chances at that rate, like, statistically, some of them are going to start to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's usually just how it works.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really fix or solve anything right now. It shouldn't really make anybody feel any better. But to me, 12 big chances missed, I look at that and I think it's like, it would kind of boggle my mind if that doesn't even out to some extent.
Yeah.
It's just law of averages at a certain point.
Right.
So
I don't think he scores the rest of the season personally.
See, you could be right, but that would surprise me. That was especially because there's track record that you can look at. Like he's been a good goal scorer in MLS. Strikers have runs of form where they're not finishing. It's not like he's not the first striker to go through it.
Yeah,
but I don't know. We're just gonna have to see.
To wait and see.
Evens out.
We'll see whose scorcher is terrible, which it's most likely mine. But we know how that goes. Next up, another one that's Nico related from Buck Russ 1. Is Nico past expiration date?
Yeah, I'm not ready to fully say that just yet. There's still a lot of games left, so narratives like this can always fluctuate. And another thing I would think about with this is that if you think back to the start of the season when the team actually looked amazingly good for the first like 5, 6, 7 games, whatever that was, I thought Nico was cooking. I thought he looked pretty much like his old self. The guy's still a freak in terms of his fitness and just all the running he does. I don't think it doesn't look to me like he's lost much in terms of that fitness or physical ability. But at the same time, he doesn't have a primary assist since April. So one thing that's concerning is that with where they're at with personnel right now, they kind of needed vintage 2016 level Nico to be carrying a lot of the offense. And at 34, these last few weeks, it hasn't panned out like that. So I understand the question. It's going to continue to be a question. But
he is getting old, though.
I mean, yeah, like the Portland Timbers went through this with Diego Valeri, where he was staying productive into his mid-30s, and then they had to make that decision, and he became a super sub and took like a backseat role until he ended up retiring. So that day is going to come. That's another one where I feel like I've said this a few times, but that's another one where we're gonna find out in the weeks to come. Because right now with Nico, there's two sides of it. There was the beginning of the season where he looked good and the offense looked great, and then there's been these last few weeks where he hasn't been getting on the stat sheet and the offense hasn't looked good. So
yeah, I do want to loop back real quick to Oren's question here, where he talks about focused on 2024, focused on 2025. Our in-house statistician, Colton Bittersnail, did let me know Steph is going to be, he is 37.
Yeah.
He's going to be 38.
Yeah.
2024, 2025.
That's for sure. And he is that old, but there's precedent for goalkeepers playing into their late 30s, and even like you see like 40-year-old goalkeepers sometimes. So
sure.
I don't know.
But do you want that?
Yeah, like I don't know if I would bank on that. But I don't think it's out of the question that you could ride Steph for another year or two, assuming he keeps playing at a high level. It'll be interesting to see if they bring him back next year, because you're right. He's going to be 38 next year. That being said, like everything I've seen from Steph in Cleveland in the run that he's gotten, he looks like a good MLS goalkeeper to me. So if it came to it and, maybe you want to bring Steph back, but he can't play every single game, Steph Cleveland seems like a good goalkeeper, or, maybe you do have to make a change at that position. It's an off-season question.
Joseph Tanner has a question here. Actually, a few of them. We'll start with all three of them. Let's go. Number 1, Rosnak's numbers are supposed to be great, but he doesn't seem to pass the, quote, eye test as a game-changing DP. Why is that?
So I'm assuming that you're talking about, you're not talking about stat sheet numbers, and you're talking about like underlying numbers. Like I know his passing accuracy and his grades are all really high. I think a lot of what it is what I was saying, which is that playing him back line, his role isn't really to be stuff in the stat sheet. It's when you're playing CDM like that, it's more stuff like, ball retention, progressive passes, unleashing counters. He's good at that, and they won CCL with him doing that, okay? But that's not his best role, and it's not the role that he thrived at RSL. So I think in terms of him having that game-changing DP impact, I think the answer is playing him higher up the field, which is what they've done these last few games, and there's been mixed results. The offense scored 3 goals in Charlotte with him playing there and didn't score the next 2, but in the Charlotte game, Christian and Raul were playing. So I really want to see him playing that advanced role with the full lineup. That's what I want to see, and I think in that scenario, we might see that he actually does have that type of ability.
I think he's got to go up farther.
Yeah,
he's got to go up further.
It was time.
He's got.
They didn't. I don't remember them saying that when they signed him, it was as a CDM. Like that's not like his.
It seemed like they just needed someone there, and they slotted him in, and that's kind of.
It was a sign. It was a signing with an eye at CCL, and they won it. Like you can't hate on it from that standpoint. That's kind of the trump card with the Rusnak signing. Like they won CCL with it, so it worked in that sense.
Number 2, from the same, Joseph Tanner. I'd hate to see them gone, but how quickly can we flip from Nico and Rui Diaz to some new talent?
I mean, not till next season at the earliest. You can't do it this season.
There is zero cap.
There's not a lot of roster flexibility right now. Like any move you might want to see in season in terms of like a big name signing or big addition, like they can't really do that right now. So it's a really, I mean, I know I've said it already, but this is a roll with what you got situation.
I saw on Twitter, I don't know if this is something that's possible, but taking Javi and putting him on the season-ending injury list to free up some cap space.
I saw that tweet too. I'd have to look into that. I'm not actually sure if you can do that.
But hypothetically, let's say it does.
If you can do that, I think that's a pretty sick idea. I mean, depending on the extent of his injury, I guess, because like Javi is the third CB on this team, and it's not like you can play Jackson Reagan and Yeimar every single game. Like, it's important to have a third CB. So if it's just like a little muscle strain that he's going to be back in a couple weeks, I probably wouldn't do that because he's still got value as a rotational piece. But if it's a long-term injury where he's out for the season and you're allowed to do that, it's not a bad idea.
Sweet. We'll have to see. Number 3, will the club cash in on Nuhu or let his moment pass?
I mean,
I got an answer for that one. But
okay,
I'll let you go first.
I mean, Nuhu's had hype around a potential sale for a long time, for years. For whatever reason, nothing ever popped. It seems like his value to Seattle is higher to the Sounders than it is on the open market. So maybe they'll still move him at some point. Like, he's playing at a high enough level where maybe that interest is still there. I don't really know, but it kind of feels like if it hasn't happened yet, like I don't know if it's going to happen. That's kind of how I see it. Do you see that differently?
No, we talked about it before, just shooting the shit. And if it hasn't happened now, it's not probably going to happen. Does he fit the system? No, it really makes no sense to have a wingback like Nuhu firing in crosses that will ultimately end up 17 yards from where he's trying to play them and shots that are 1,000 feet over the crossbar. But he is so good at one-on-one defending. It's like who are you going to replace him with?
Last night, really, like Nuhu's Nuhu's a guy who's taken a fair amount of heat this year, but I thought the Orlando game that's like Nuhu at his best, and that's a demonstration of the value he brings. Like he is a very, very good 1v1 defender, very, very good. So there's a ton of value in that, even if he doesn't bring what you wish he did in attack. For like the Sounders like their fullbacks to get forward in attack, and that's not really his game, but he brings a lot on defense. He still does.
Yes, there's no flipping him at this point. I think his moment has came and passed. The World Cup happened. Him pocketing Mo Salah happened.
That was
his
AFCON,
value was at an all-time high then. I don't really see them getting rid of him unless it's to another MLS team, but I could be wrong. Last question here comes from Kenny Sloth 253. Yeimar leads the league in interceptions and shutouts. Why isn't he also leading the Defensive Player of the Year conversation? With his clear emphasis on improved passing, he's become a more dynamic piece, and I want to say better than Chad ever was, and in a more difficult league. Scorchers.
That is hot. I like this one because that has some real heat to it. Better than Chad. I don't know if I can get on board with that. Chad's the best CB I've ever seen in MLS. Do you want to do a little just Chad reminiscing right now?
Dude, let's reminisce. I love him.
Chad never made a mistake. It was wild. He's the one CB I've ever watched, and I watched a lot of them. I watched every game that he played for the Sounders. But you would have to rack his career film to find him fucking up one time. Yeah. He just never did. Yeimar is a great CB, and he's having a really good year. But like, you could go through his film and you could find plenty of hiccups that like you just never saw from Chad. as for Yeimar for Defensive Player of the Year, he might get some love for that. He's having a good year. I don't know if he's having like a hugely dominant year that's getting widespread national notoriety, but this defense has been really good, and he's been the anchor of it. But, I might mess with a Jackson Reagan for Defender of the Year take more than that, though. That's one that might get me going. But I love that question, though, because it gave an opportunity to reminisce on Chad, which that his era of defensive dominance on this team was just is unparalleled. He's like one of the rare CBs where it's like fun to watch him. It's actively fun to watch him play defense because of just how perfectly executed every single thing he does was.
Yeah, and you know what? You said that the league is more difficult now. That's true. I think you could still stick Chad in his prime in this current league, and he would be just as good as he was when he was playing. I mean, he was just that good of a player.
The other thing is Chad was really, really dominant on set pieces and like in the air, and he scored a lot of goals.
Yeah.
Which Yeimar has a few goals. Jackson Reagan hasn't scored one yet. That was like a whole new element though for Chad's value. It's like this guy, you're telling me this guy is the best defender that's ever played in this league by a long shot, and he's just a beast in the air and bangs in like 5 goals a year. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Dude, literally, he was him.
Yeah.
He was him. That's all the questions we got this week, Ari.
Okay. Nice. Well, thank you so much to everyone who replied to the tweet and submitted them. I know I didn't get to every single one of them, but we only have so much time. A couple of you out there also got a little there was a full-on dispute going on in my mentions today. People were getting a little rowdy and toxic with it, which I realize that's going to happen in my mentions from time to time.
They're just lobbing scorchers at each other.
Yeah, which is fair, but you don't have to be super toxic in my mentions, I guess is all I'm saying. You could scale it back a little bit.
Let the girls fight. Come on.
That's fine. I think we can just about call it there, but I do have a couple quick hitters, Noah,
Let's hear 'em.
To close it out. I'm excited for this first one, okay?
Oh, boy.
Are you ready for the stupidest thing that you've ever heard
yeah.
in your life?
I'm so ready.
Okay, so CONCACAF came out with their disciplinary rulings for the fracas that the multiple...
I'm sorry, it's fracas. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. For the fracases that took place in the U.S. Versus Mexico game that we talked about famously, did a whole episode on it.
Correct.
And so they've issued multiple suspensions. So this is the first stupid thing. Weston McKennie and Serginho Dest were both suspended on top of their red card suspension for their roles in the fracas. I think Dest got 2 games and Weston McKennie got 3 games. So they have to serve that on top of the 1 game that they already served in the final. All right. I just, before we get into the really stupid part, I just want to say Weston's red card was such bullshit to begin with, because yes, like his hands, it's hands to the face, and that's supposed to be an auto red, but you can't do that supposedly. But I could point to countless instances I've seen in CONCACAF matches where that happens and they don't call it a red card. And I know this because every time I'm watching, I go, yo, that's a red card. That is a red card. The hands were to the face. You have a rule on that. That guy should be out of the game based on the standard you've set. And they call it not even half the time. They just don't call it. And I could also name at least 2 situations where that happened to Weston. They put the hands to his face and there's no red card. So like there's just no consistency with how they enforce that. And then all of a sudden when Weston does it, now they're like, oh, okay, that's for sure a red card that time. So that's annoying to begin with. And then Dest, I don't really see what he did that was egregious more than a normal red card. Maybe they're just trying to put the hammer down because they don't want games getting out of control like that, which I get. But like, so that's not even the stupid part, Noah. That's not even the stupid part.
That's not it.
This is the stupid part. So Weston and Serginho Dest aren't on the roster for the Gold Cup. They weren't going to be on the team anyway.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to serve the suspension like for those Gold Cup games. Those it counts for like the suspension. So they weren't playing them in them anyway.
Fire.
So they're like suspended.
Fire.
But they're not on the team.
Yeah.
So like that's not a suspension.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that seems about right for CONCACAF.
Like, what are
That's
we doing?
the most CONCACAF outcome I think you could have.
That works out for me because I didn't want them to be missing any games where they were on the roster. But it's like that's not putting your foot down because they weren't going to be playing in these games anyway. I don't know.
That's some elite finger wagging from CONCACAF right there.
It's CONCACAF is just killing me sometimes with this stuff, man. Like, why the extra suspension to begin with, and then how are you gonna? Whatever, it's fine. The two Mexico guys that were involved got extra suspensions too. So
yeah, I think they should have suspended them all longer. Personally,
well, okay, that's my other point is that if Weston gets 3 games for that, the guy who kicked Fuller and Balogun in the leg to set that whole thing off, he should get like 20 games. That's actually a dangerous play. That could have injured somebody.
Fire.
Yeah, that's my take on that.
Take those heaters out. No, I just want them all to be suspended like 20 games. Just so everyone in U.S. men's national team Twitter can have their brains melt.
Suspend them all.
Suspend them all.
Who cares?
Suspend me
CONCACAF.
too.
All right.
Suspend this episode, Ari.
I had main characters of the week. Real
let's
quick.
go.
All right.
No, don't unsuspend the episode. Let's go.
Main characters of the week. I got one in a good way, one in a bad way. Main character in a good way. DC United 3-0 over FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati has been on a record-breaking pace this season. They're on pace to break the points record. They'd only lost once all year. DCU boat raced him. FC Cincinnati, they were in kind of a similar situation to Seattle. They had a bunch of starters out, but like they're still considered the best team in the league right now, at least, points wise. So even with the absences that they had, I was surprised to see them get boat raced like that. They looked like 2018 FC Cincinnati, just shipping goals. Like remember that when they shipped like 74 in one season.
I do. The wooden spoons back to back were incredible. Back to back. I have a lot of friends in Cincinnati who I felt for. I love that team, but it's good. I'm happy that they're doing well now.
Oh, I agree because
they're a likable team.
They're a likable team, and it was tough because when they came into MLS, they had such great fan support. Like it looks like the environment. I haven't been yet. It's a stadium I need to go to, but the scene that they have at TQL looks like unreal. And it was tough to see like 30,000 people packed in there bringing all this energy, and then they lose 5-0. You're like, oh, gee, like you're going to like lose this interest if you can't turn it around. They very much turned it around. So they kind of became the main character of this discussion, even though DC United's the one that beat them. But main character in a bad way, Atlanta United.
Oof.
I'm 4-0 against the Red Bulls. So I saw that and I assumed they must have been in a situation like Cincy or like Seattle where they were in rotation mode. And then I looked at the lineups, and it was pretty much all their guys. Like there might have been 1 or 2 changes in the back line, but like as far like Thiago Amado was out there, Georgios, their striker, he was out there. So like I don't know what's going on.
Bring
there.
Gonzo home.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about them already. They're having a weird season, but I was surprised to see that one. They struggle on the road a lot. But damn, I don't know, 4-0?
That's tough.
As tough as things have been for Seattle and as kind of meh as that Orlando game was, it's like, they're not the main character. No one's really talking about Seattle this week except for people in Seattle. But
I think it's hard. There's a lot of fans who understandably see the rest of the league and see where teams are at. But frankly, Ari, we don't abide by the standards of average. We are the Seattle fucking Sounders, buddy. Okay? No. We demand excellence.
That's a fair point, but I'm talking more like national perception. So
Yeah, fair.
like Atlanta 4-0 over Red Bulls, or to the Red Bulls.
To the Red Bulls, yeah.
That caught my eye. All right.
Yep.
I think we can call it right there. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. I'm going to try and change the speech up a little bit this week because Noah said I've been saying the same thing every time. So
I'm ready. This is a new one.
I mean, not really. Just thank you all so much for tuning in. We're closing in on 1,000 downloads overall, right? And,
Yeah.
And we get like something for that. So we're hoping that we crack that milestone.
I get the love and affection of my parents. Finally. Finally.
1,000 downloads would be huge. We're closing right in. I think we're going to get it this episode. Keep subscribing. Tell your friends. Tell your parents. Rate 5 stars. Write us a Apple
Tell your
Podcast
bartender.
review. Tell your bartender. Just tell everyone you know. Until next time, we out.
Peace.